Karen this, Karen that, Karen everywhere. It felt like the whole neighborhood was buzzing about her. She's the one who always had something to say about everyone and everything. But despite all the noise, I had never had a single encounter with Karen. Maybe it's because I'm a low-key guy, easygoing, and not one for drama. Or maybe, just maybe, my calm demeanor makes people think twice. I'm that neighbor who keeps to himself, mowing the lawn, reading the paper, and never making waves. But here's the thing. People might think I'm a no-nonsense neighbor, someone who just might take care of things if they're pushed far enough. The truth is, I was fine with that. I wasn't one to stir the pot. So, when Karen started making waves in our little neighborhood, I let it slide. Everyone knew her reputation, bossy, loud, and always finding something to complain about. But that was the thing with Karen. She never stopped. After a while, I stopped listening to the gossip. Who really had time to care about what she thought about your yard or the color of your fence? I didn't even give her a second thought. Until one afternoon, things took a surprising turn. I was enjoying a lazy Saturday, chilling on my porch, sipping on iced tea, when I noticed a couple of my neighbors gathered by the street, whispering amongst themselves. This wasn't unusual. The neighborhood was full of gossipers, after all, and it was just another typical day, with everyone talking behind someone's back. But then, something caught my attention. A commotion near Karen's house. She was out there yelling at someone. From what I could tell, it was another neighbor, Greg, from a few houses down. He seemed agitated, trying to keep his distance while Karen was practically wagging her finger in his face. But it wasn't the yelling that caught my attention. It was what Karen was yelling about. She was complaining about my mailbox. Yes, my mailbox. Apparently, it didn't fit with the aesthetic of the neighborhood. It was an old-fashioned, slightly weathered metal box, but not enough to cause this much of a stir. Yet, Karen insisted it was an eyesore. According to her, it didn't belong. She even said it was ruining the look of the block. Now, that was the final straw. I wasn't involved yet, but everyone knew that when Karen had something to say, it was going to be a problem. I could hear her loud voice carrying across the street as she went on and on about the neighborhood standards. I wasn't sure how she got the idea that she had the right to dictate those standards, but somehow she thought she did. Greg wasn't happy about the criticism either. He had lived in a neighborhood longer than any of us, and he wasn't one to back down. But that was just the beginning. As I stepped forward to head to my apartment, I noticed something odd. My mailbox was locked with a chain and padlock. I walked back, confused, and asked a few neighbors if they'd seen anything unusual. Their responses were quick, almost too quick, and each one seemed hesitant to even utter a word about it. It was as if someone had threatened them into silence, their eyes darting nervously. I immediately knew someone had deliberately done this. But who? It wasn't a coincidence, and I wasn't about to let it slide. I figured this was Karen's doing, but I needed proof. My suspicion only grew when I checked the contents of my mailbox. It wasn't bills or letters from friends. No, it was piles of junk mail, papers, flyers, and coupons all shoved inside. And not just a little. My entire mailbox was stuffed. That unmistakable scent of perfume lingered in the air as I sifted through the papers. Karen had definitely done this. No one else. It wasn't an accident. She was sending me a message. I wasn't going to let this go. It wasn't just a matter of junk mail anymore. This was personal, and I needed to make sure she learned her lesson. But how to handle it? I didn't want to make a scene. I didn't want to be the angry neighbor. I needed to outsmart her. The idea hit me, and I knew it was perfect. No yelling, no drama. Just pure strategy. It was time for Karen to regret this in the most calculated way possible. I didn't rush to do anything that day. I went straight into my building, trying my best not to overthink the situation. I knew what I was doing, and I wasn't going to let anything distract me from my plan. It was time to stay calm and let everything unfold as it was meant to. After all, patience was key. The next morning, I woke up, had my coffee, and got ready like any other day. But today was different. Today, I had a task to accomplish, and I was prepared to follow through. I grabbed a saw from the garage, something simple enough but precise for the job. I headed out, making sure not to draw any attention to myself. I walked straight over to my mailbox, which was still locked with that ridiculous chain and padlock Karen had put on it. I had been waiting for this moment. With quick, deliberate motions, I sawed through the chain. It was almost too easy, and with a few quick cuts, it fell apart. My mailbox was now free. No more obstacles. I opened the door to the mailbox slowly. The pile of junk mail was even bigger than the day before. The envelopes and flyers had spilled over, some barely fitting inside. There were coupon booklets, flyers for all sorts of things, and at least a dozen ads for various companies. Among the mess, there was that same distinct perfume scent. It was as if Karen had left her mark on every single piece of mail. My frustration built, but I didn't act on it. Not yet. Before I could even close the mailbox, I heard the familiar voices of my neighbors from across the street. "Hey, what's going on?" It was Tim from down the block. He was leaning against his porch, watching me curiously, while his wife, Jill, stood beside him, shaking her head. "Seems like you've got quite the collection there," Jill added, nodding toward the pile of junk mail spilling from my mailbox. I stood up straight, trying to keep my calm. "Oh, just some unsolicited junk mail. Karen's little gift." Tim raised his eyebrows. "Ah, so it's Karen again. What's she up to now?" "Well," I replied with a sarcastic grin, "I think she's starting a mail collection service. Only, she's not asked me for permission." Jill laughed, but there was a hint of concern in her voice. "She's really crossing the line now, isn't she? I guess she thinks I'm some kind of junk mail magnet," I said, shutting the mailbox door with a little more force than I intended. "Don't worry, I'll handle it." "Well, if you need help, you know where to find us," Tim said, his voice suddenly taking on a more serious tone. "We've all had our run-ins with her." "I'm sure you have," I muttered, feeling the weight of the situation. I appreciated the support, but something told me I was going to have to take matters into my own hands. Just as I was about to head inside, I saw Karen herself walk out of her front door, looking like she'd just won the lottery. She flashed a smug smile as she waved to me, and I could tell she had no idea what was about to happen. "Hey," she called, her voice loud and overly cheerful. "I see you got your mailbox unlocked." I didn't respond immediately, instead letting the silence between us build. I turned to face her, watching her pretend to be oblivious to the mess she'd created. But I wasn't going to play her game anymore. Karen," I began, my voice steady, "I've had enough of this. I'm not going to let you turn my mailbox into your personal garbage can." She raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by my tone. "Oh, come on," she said dismissively. "It's just a little junk mail. No need to overreact." I leaned forward slightly, my eyes narrowing. "No, you made your point. Now, I'm going to make sure you regret it." Her face faltered for a second, and just like that, the smile faded. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice now sounding more uncertain. But before I could say anything else, I heard Tim shout across the street. "Hey, Karen, you've been causing a lot of trouble around here lately. Maybe you should cool it before you really upset people." Karen shot him an icy glare, but she didn't respond. Instead, she turned and went back inside her house, the door slamming behind her. It was clear she hadn't expected that kind of reaction. I didn't say anything more to my neighbors. I just took one last look at the mailbox and then turned around, heading back inside my building. I knew what I had to do next. The drama wasn't over, and I had just gotten started. It wasn't going to be long before Karen got exactly what she deserved. A week had passed since I cut the chain off my mailbox and uncovered the depth of Karen's little gift. The tension was still high, but I remained calm, methodical. I knew it was only a matter of time before Karen would try something else. She couldn't resist making things difficult. I had been waiting for the perfect moment, and that moment was coming up fast. It was Karen's birthday. I knew this because, over the years, the entire neighborhood had been subjected to her endless bragging about the extravagant parties she always threw for herself. Karen's big birthday bash, she'd call it, something she expected everyone to attend, whether they liked it or not. Well, this time, she wasn't getting the birthday bash she expected. I had been planning something special for her, something unforgettable, something that would make her wish she had never messed with me in the first place. I made sure I kept my distance, going about my days like nothing was out of the ordinary. I knew Karen was probably expecting another round of complaints, or maybe a visit from some concerned neighbor. She didn't realize the storm that was brewing right under her nose. By the time the day arrived, I had everything in place. I decided to send her a birthday present she'd never forget. I was calm, of course. As usual, I moved carefully and without drawing any attention to myself. I spent the entire morning ensuring my plan would go off without a hitch. When the time came, I drove my car over to the local distribution center and picked up something I had arranged weeks earlier, 1,000 birthday cards. These weren't just any cards. They were filled with more junk than Karen could ever hope to read in a lifetime. Discount coupons, flyers, ads, you name it, everything I could find to make sure she would have to deal with piles and piles of junk. And just for the fun of it, I made sure her name was on every single one of them. Then came the real twist. I had made sure her mailbox was targeted first, but this time, it wasn't just a few pieces of mail. No, this time it was an avalanche. The kind of delivery that made her wish she had never started this in the first place. The ultimate birthday surprise was waiting at her front door. I had it all perfectly timed. As her birthday party began to kick off in the evening, she was busy inside, oblivious to the chaos that was about to unfold. The moment the first package of mail arrived, I knew the clock was ticking. Just before the party hit full swing, I stood at the edge of her driveway, watching her front door. I gave it a few minutes, just to make sure I wasn't interrupted by her having a little chit-chat with the neighbors. Then I got the call. The delivery truck had arrived. Hundreds of birthday cards, packages, and letters started pouring out of the truck and onto Karen's doorstep. It didn't stop. They kept coming and coming, and the noise from the driver's horn, as if warning her to come out and deal with the mess, was music to my ears. Within moments, Karen's birthday party guests had started piling out of the house, looking at the mess. Her neighbors, probably more than a few, stood in shock, watching the chaos unfold. And there, in the middle of it all, was Karen. She stepped outside, seeing the piles of junk mail flooding her doorstep. Her face turned pale. "What is all this?" she screamed. I stood back, a grin on my face as I watched her attempt to grab a few of the pieces. "Is this some kind of joke?" she demanded, shaking one of the flyers in the air. I couldn't help but chuckle under my breath. This was too perfect. As Karen began to try and organize the mess, I watched her frustration grow. Then I saw her turn toward me, her eyes narrowing as realization hit her like a ton of bricks. "You did this, didn't you?" she seethed. I gave her a polite but nonchalant smile. "I don't know what you mean, Karen," I said calmly. "But it seems like you've got quite the delivery, all courtesy of your favorite junk mail service." Her face twisted in anger, but there was nothing she could do. Her reputation was already in tatters in the neighborhood, and now she had this to deal with. As I walked away, I turned back and caught a final glimpse of Karen, still trying to make sense of the piles of mail, her face red and flushed with humiliation. This was my gift to her, my message, my quiet revenge. This time, it wasn't just about mail. It was about showing Karen that not everyone could be controlled. Not everyone would bend to her petty demands. And sometimes the best way to handle someone like her was with a little bit of cleverness and a whole lot of junk. As I left her to handle the aftermath, I couldn't help but smile to myself. Sometimes, revenge wasn't about shouting or fighting. It was about the quiet satisfaction of knowing the perfect moment to strike. And this was my moment.